Welcome to The Independent Artist, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists, NAIA. I'm Douglas Sigworth. I'm a glassblower.
I'm Will Armstrong, mixed media artist. Join us as we explore the topics that affect the lives and livelihood of art show artists.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. The Independent Artist is back on the radio airwaves. I'm here with our good friend Douglas. Douglas, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm good, man. Trying to figure out how to make some artwork here and pack up my studio and head north. We're headed up to Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be working in the big old barn again, the big old unheated barn, which hopefully it's warmed up there by now.
It is. It was 80 yesterday up here, so you'll be just fine.
Gorgeous. I can't wait. My girls are looking forward to seeing some grass and trees and water. New Mexico is gorgeous, but they grew up on the East Coast, and they're ready for a different climate.
Cool. Well, looking over social media this weekend, I was so thrilled to see the video of the award ceremony at Winter Park. What did you think?
You know what? I love it when they make a big deal out of the awards. You can hear it coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
You get that little tickle, and you're like, oh,
Are they coming?
And it's always a little embarrassing when they're like, da, 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 and then they walk on right past and give it to your neighbor, but you're like, okay. But you're happy for them. Yeah. I like the big deal, to be honest.
I do too.
Make a big to-do out of it. It's fun.
But did you notice, this was after the CDC notice, people didn't have their masks on. It was like, whoa, this is like back, like life is normal again.
Yeah. It did look like that. It did feel like that. And I'm happy for those folks that are, not sweating underneath the masks. The 3-ply gets to be a little much down there in Florida. So I'm happy for them as long as they're feeling safe. And
yeah. Well, the big winner was Helen Gottlieb.
You know what, man? I have been following her work, and I do. I really love her work. Her and Dylan are just one of those art show couples that are so cool to watch. They're so creative, and they spur each other on. And they have been in the studio just cranking really cool work. So I'm A, happy, and B, not surprised because the work that she has been putting out has been incredible that I've seen on Instagram. And
totally.
So huge congratulations to her, and love seeing that when it's somebody so deserving. And also, you know what? Another thing, a lot is made of printmaking, and printmaking as artwork. This is not reproduction work. This is actual old school, hand carved, get your fingers dirty printmaking, really pulling prints, hand tinting them, doing some gold leaf, just incredible work.
The interview I had with Carol Swayze, she talked about actually getting out of printmaking because she spent so much time having to explain it, that it was just kind of one of those things people would call it reproductions, and it was just so confusing. And she's like, I'm jumping to painting.
Yeah, that has been a huge burr in her ass for a long time. She has that conversation about printmaking, and I get it. I don't like to say no in my booth. Like that's my big sales thing. It's like, is this printmaking? No. Or is this, because I, in my work, and I've changed it a little bit, but I've gone after this kind of almost like it's a hand-drawn printmaking style. So I'm going by mixed media now because I'm doing more brush work and I'm doing more shading and I'm doing this other stuff. But when I was going, you look back 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm going after almost a lino cut style drawing, then I would jury under drawing because I was doing the line work with a pen, and I got tired of saying no to people all the time. I'd get out there and I'd say like, is this printmaking? No. And I don't like saying no. I like saying it's drawing because I am using a pen, but it was confusing for people. Now that I've moved away from it, you can tell it's a little bit different. But I don't know. My point being, it's such a fuzzy line for folks that the public is so dumb. They're just like, is this? And then they don't really care. They're just like Cliff and I were talking about in this episode that you'll hear. You're the hottest girl in the bar. The people are going to say something stupid to you. Yeah. they're saying something stupid to you, everybody has the 5 dumbest things that people say to you in the booth, and you try to avoid them.
Well, the thing I love saying no to is, can you make me light fixtures? That's the one I just say, no, this is not a light fixture, and I'm not making you a light fixture.
All right. Well, sometimes you want to say no and just get the hell out of here. But yeah, I agree with you.
Well, there were some of the other awards I wanted to send some shout outs to were the other glass guys out there, my glass buddies, Mark Sudeth, Amber Marshall, Richard Ryan, Michael Hayes. I really love your guys' work, and I'm so happy that you guys were in Winter Park and showing. I hope you all had great shows in addition to your awards.
That's very kind of you. I had to turn off social media over the weekend, and I got a little tired about hearing how beautiful it was, and there were rainbows coming out of everybody's booths, and the glorious sales that you were having. I'm happy for you. Also, like I said in the previous podcast, I don't want to hear about it. And it was a good weekend for wood. Speaking of awards, I'm a big fan of carved wood and the wood artists out there, and I saw a lot of the that really responded and resonated with some of the jury. So I like that. It seemed like an educated jury, and the awards went to really, you can argue about them here and there. You can ask for a recount, but the awards go to who they go to, and
That's
they like
right.
who they like. And I was really happy with who they chose this year.
Yeah. And the artist I spoke to last week, Reiko, she got a big award. And when I saw that, it made me remember that there's somebody else that falls under the same category as Art Show DNA like her, and that's Brenna Clausen, the daughter of Duke and Ladez. And she's also just killing it getting into these top shows, and she also won an award this weekend.
Fantastic. I love hearing that. That's incredible.
We launched the podcast a month ago, and Will and I were both looking forward to being out on the road and interacting with everybody. And look, both of us are stuck at home here, and we just really appreciate Amy Landsberg stepping up and kind of being a surrogate for us and talking about the podcast and circulating our bumper stickers. And we really just love the enthusiasm. We really appreciate all your help with that.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I love those photos that you took with people with the stickers, and it was fun. It really made me miss our tribe, and wish we'd been out there with you. Thank you again.
Yeah. Hey, I got some great news. Remember how I was stressing out last week that I was losing all my July shows? Well, my August is on track. Art and the Pearl is a go.
Nice. You know what? That's fantastic news for a lot of people. It's going to be an interesting weekend because Art and the Pearl and Cherry Creek are, a lot of people that I know, Art and the Pearl and Cherry Creek are their 2 favorite shows. Oh. So you can't do both of them.
That's a Sophie's choice right there.
It is, and it's going to be an interesting weekend for waitlist artists too. So hopefully a lot of shows aren't doing wait lists, and they're using those spaces to create more kind of room. But being a waitlisted artist for Cherry Creek and Art the Pearl, please get off your ass and give me a call. I shouldn't say ass. Get off your ass. Please get off your lovely posterior and call Will. Let him know. You know what I mean? Waitlist deserves love too.
Well, my challenge was the whole building the tour thing that I talked about a couple episodes ago. And so I had the first 2 in the lineup, and to have Pearl be the cherry on top just makes things great. So I did send an email out to them because there were some things I was concerned about, and that was the rioting and just the overall status of downtown Portland. What I love about the show is that it's run by artists. It's a show for artists by artists. And this committee, they reached back out to me and they let me know that they're going to be super transparent about planning the show and what's going to be done to kind of make us all safe and make us feel okay down there.
That's great news. It really is. I love Portland, and I know that they have had a problem with some of the rioting. A lot of the Black Lives Matter protests and things were going through the areas that were close to where the park is. But if you look at where a lot of that was happening on the map, it was a pretty small area. So I'm confident that Portland is going to be up and running and excited about the show. There's concern online about that, like Uptown. What's going to happen in Minneapolis? Right. That Uptown area was really hard hit, but
Yeah.
Hey, you're in the area. Have you been down through that?
I still haven't. I mean, that was a regular place for us. We would go every, but we are getting back out and we are doing stuff on a regular basis again. And now, that the mask mandate is dropped, I think things are going to feel a lot more normal again.
I hope so, because the rumors on the street are that like Uptown looks like bombed out Beirut, and it's like I don't know that it does.
Yeah,
I know it was hard hit, but is it really that bad? People like to wring their hands and clutch their pearls and gnash their teeth.
Well, I will say that I've heard the Apple Store is all boarded up, and Calhoun Square is boarded up. I mean, that's right there. That's in the heart of it. But tell you what, that'll be my mission. I will report back to the podcast. We'll have to go out for a nice date night into Minneapolis and check it all out and get back to you guys.
Bring your spray paint.
Well, hey, Will, I got an email this week from one of our listeners, an artist, and she brought up a topic with me that I thought was kind of interesting. She said she, applied for a lot of these shows way back in 2019, like the rest of us. And she's felt, with the real shift with the pandemic and what she's been motivated to create over the pandemic, that now that the shows are starting to happen and she's showing up, her body of work is different. And so it's kind of hard for her to want to show the work that she, juried in with 2 years ago.
Do you think you have to? Are they going to be strict with that?
Well, she said a particular show that she was working with did give her a bit of a hard time about it.
That is interesting. That's an instance where I usually ask for forgiveness instead of permission.
Right.
I do have an email set to send to there's a particular art show that was asking, hey, let me see it. What is some of your new work? And I am going to send them some new stuff and just be like, hey, this is what I'm bringing. I'm super excited about it. But to me, we're artists. We're not. We don't commodify this thing. We're like, hey, this is where my inspiration is going.
Yeah.
Granted, if you all of a sudden decided to start glass blowing some bongs, and it's completely different than your other work, then I can see that being something. I don't know. I think that might be. I'm hoping that's a much ado about nothing. But
this rule has been in place for a while.
Yeah, I agree that has changed for a while. But these shows that I juried into in 2019, and now some of them are getting pushed to 2022.
Right.
They got to come up with a new policy.
I think so too. I think they have to be super flexible and be like, in this instance, we juried in the artist and the quality of work that the artist does, and if the work is not as good as what they applied with, that's a different story than showing up with a different body of work, but it's still like outstanding quality.
Right. My technique is not going to change. My subject matter is definitely going to change, and I'm exploring new subjects and new stories and trying to tell my relationship with where I'm currently living. I've moved 2 times. I lived in the same place, Richmond, Virginia, for 50 years. Or 49 years, and now I've moved twice, Richville, Minnesota, and now Santa Fe, New Mexico. So, those things are going to dictate my work. I changed the subject matter. Right? Now, granted, I'm not taking photographs and framing them now. I'm still using the same material and doing the same thing. So I can see them having a beef if you go from glass blowing to making
beads and jewelry or something.
Well, if you go from glass blowing to jewelry, all of a sudden, we've got a problem. But you start making different glass. Who cares? To me, you're expressing yourself. That's fine. But I'm not the show.
Yeah, I had this conversation with Ben Fry, and he's a large scale, original only painting kind of artist, and he was talking about. Not right now, but this was an experience a few years ago where he had a run of great sales and sold all of his originals and needed to replace his work pretty quickly. And he showed up to a show and had a new body of work just because he was inspired to create new stuff. It was outstanding work, but they really did kind of bust his chops for it. And they were almost making it seem like he couldn't show at their show because his work didn't match his images on the application.
Well, I mean, with Ben, you're always going to get the same quality. Ben is not changing his technique.
Right.
He's you're always going to get the same quality from him. That to me is a different argument. Now, I've been at Fort Worth when black and white photographer juries into the show, and he shows up and he's got color photographs of like the dock images, look like, I'm going down the dock. And it's like, well, that's his bread and butter at the show, and it's color, but it is not what he juried with at all. So he had to pack it up. And he was like, well, I'm not going to pack it up. And then they called somebody on the wait list who was there within 45 minutes, and see you later, asshole. He's got to go.
Waiting in the parking lot, waiting to fill the spot.
Sorry. Yeah. See you later, jerk. You've got to go. It's time. So I don't know. This year is different to me. I think everybody's going to be a little bit, it's a little bit, this isn't people trying to cook the rules of a show. These are artists trying to make new work and express themselves, and you can't expect for 2 years to go by. 2 years. 2 years, some point,
yeah.
To go by and not have new work. Because if you don't have new work, then I'm going to judge you. Be like, you've got the same crap you juried with in 2019. Where's your new stuff?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I get the whole idea of jurying with high-end work and showing up with, trinkets. That is important to keep out. But I really plead to the shows to kind of lighten up on this rule. Let's all just get through the next couple of years and then kind of get back to business as usual. Yeah.
I think they will. Yeah, don't you think?
I mean, so.
I'm not speaking for shows.
Yeah.
At all. This is Will Armstrong's opinion. This is not maybe even your opinion. This is just what I'm thinking and throwing out there. I just think people have to give us a break.
Yeah, totally.
As long as it fits within that narrow framework of, okay, here's me, here's my quality, here's what I create. If David Bierstrom decides to do one of his pencil works on, a raven as opposed to one of the elephants that he juried in with, it's still the same gorgeous work. It's not going to be.
Right. I mean, isn't the whole point of the rule just to make sure the quality is up there? So really, let's just jury in the artist. Yeah. And support the artist. Excuse me, sir. This is not an elephant. Where is your...
I just don't think it's going to...
We're a show that is promoting original handmade art, but that thing that you made like 2 years ago, where is it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if I show up making sweaters, they were like, here are my sweaters. It's a different beast.
I really am glad we got that email. And, we love having these conversations that really pertain to life on the road and show life and everything. So if anyone does have anything they want to share conversations with us and would like to hear our take on it, send us an email at theindependentartistpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, if you want to wind me up, just put the key in the back of my head, and I'll just... I'll say what you want. I mean, I'm not going to say, I might not say what you want me to say, but I'll talk on the topic for sure.
All right. Some of the behind the scenes here at the podcast. We're doing all this over Zoom. Will's in New Mexico and I'm in Wisconsin, and we do our recording, via Zoom.
You and your son are piecing these things together and making us sound good. So my hat's off to you. I try to give you a little shout out when we talk to some of the artists, but you and your son Oliver have been doing an incredible job. So thank you for making it sound professional.
He's a great kid. He's a music major, a college student at the University of Wisconsin, River Falls. Sound engineering is the career he wants to go into. We really hand him off some challenges from week to week. We've got professional mics and we've got equipment, and Audacity helps us sound good as hosts. But, we sure can't expect all of our guests every week to have the same kind of equipment as us. So sometimes he's working with fixing audio from AirPods and all sorts of crazy sounds we're sending his way.
Yeah, I know that I've definitely sent him some audio where it sounds like I've got a trash can in my head. So I appreciate him making it sound good.
But one of the fun challenges that we had, and I say fun in quotes, is we couldn't figure out why Mickey's internet connection kept dropping her. She got dropped 6 times from the interview, and she learned later that it was because every time her boyfriend picked up the phone to make a call, that it would drop her internet. So she said she wished she would have chained him up to the tree outside to keep him off the phone.
That's amazing. It's like, Mom, I'm on the phone. old school embarrassed phone calls.
Yeah. Well, Oliver is, he has been composing music since he was a little kid, and he actually also has composed the music for the podcast. So the intro, outro, and the interludes, those are all his music. His SoundCloud and Spotify accounts, I'll link to the episode notes if anyone wants to click over and listen to his work.
Very cool. It's a catchy little jingle, so I appreciate him recording that.
Hey, thanks for the shout out for Oliver. And I think we should transition here into Cliff. You had a pretty amazing interview with Clifton Henri.
Clifton is one of my favorite artists out there just because he's an incredible human being and I love his voice. So it was a really easy conversation. Again, I've been doing this podcast so far by just calling up my friends and having a talk. And it's been pretty interesting for me because a lot of times you'll just be like, you'll just shoot the bull about anything at your dinner, but you don't actually talk about like, well, where did you get your start?
Right.
It's interesting to sit down and talk.
Well, I've been neighbors with Cliff a few times over the course of my career, and we've chatted, but this was the first time I ever found out that he went to college in my little hometown of Dubuque, Iowa. I just about fell out of my chair when I heard that one.
Yeah. I was almost expecting, he's such a Chicago guy, I would have expected him to go to school in Chicago or something like that.
Well, I've always been a huge fan of his work. I love the powerful imagery he uses, youth that are being lifted up with an eye to the future, with pride, and I'm just really excited for everyone to hear what you guys talked about, Will.
Well, thanks. Let's get right into it.
All right, here is Will's interview with Clifton Henri.
This week, the Independent Artist Podcast is proud to welcome photographer Clifton Henri. His work is heavily rooted in identity, underrepresentation, and self-declaration. He focuses specifically on portraits of Black and brown people and the environments they live in, using his own experience as fuel. I want to talk to him about his work, his story, but basically because it's easy, because he's a good friend of mine. Clifton, thanks for joining us here on the podcast.
How you been?
I've been good, man.
Hey, I think of you as a Chicago artist. Is that where you came from? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, Chicago's home, born and raised. I dipped out a little bit for, college and grad school, but then, brought my tail back on home.
Nice.
So yeah, Chicago born and bred.
Excellent. I thought we had gone to dinner at some point. I thought you had like a Louisiana connection at some point. Is that where, do you have family down there, or did I misunderstand that?
No. So definitely a New Orleans connection. One, because it's just freaking love the place.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
But my college roommate and a handful of guys I went to college with were all from New Orleans.
Okay.
To even backtrack a little bit, I went to a majority white school.
Right.
And at the height of it, there may have been 10 or 12 Black folks at the school.
You mean in Iowa, actually, just all?
In Iowa, yeah. In Dubuque, Iowa.
Right.
Yeah. So out of the, let's say 12, let's say 6 of them were guys, and 4 of them were from New Orleans. One of them ended up being my roommate and my best friend. So, Christmases and holidays and things like that would always take me to New Orleans.
Nice.
And over the years, since 2001, just kind of fell in love with the place and adopted it as a second home.
Yeah, it's an amazing city. It's what are some of your favorite spots down there? Does your friend still live down there?
Yeah, he still live down there.
Okay.
Jeez, Louise.
I mean, I've seen you.
Isn't a favorite
right?
spot?
Yeah, I've seen you down there. You've got a whole crew when you've been showing at Jazz Fest. I've seen your booth down at Jazz Fest, and
that helps too. That's part of why I love in New Orleans so much and why I'm down there so much is like Jazz Fest has now become a regular part of the schedule over the years. You know what I mean? And people know me and recognize me from my time in New Orleans, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool. My wife, Susan, but
Yep.
she's done Jazz Fest a few years in a row, and it's always amazing to me how like who you see, not just on stage, but who comes into your booth and sees your work or buys your work. I ran into Bill Murray in a beer line.
That's cool.
I couldn't freaking believe it. I was in the beer line and I hear the voice and you recognize his voice. And I look and I'm trying to be all sly and I pick up I'm like, that's Bill Murray. And I hear him and he's just talking. So I just do a selfie and I pick it up and just hold it up in front of my face. And he leans into the frame and he whispers in my ear, "You owe me $1."
You sound like him too.
Who have you run into at Jazz Fest? I'm sure you've run into people coming into your booth or just in the city.
I have Wendell Pierce.
I mean, that's a huge New Orleans guy.
Yeah. Like when he came in the booth, my boy Mac, he just leaned over into my ear and he was like, "She." You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
That's the line. That's the line we always hear.
Right. From The Wire.
Recurring line. And
he's going to do B.B. King, I just read. He's going to be playing B.B. King, but it's not a typical biopic. He's going to do, there's some kind of story, like a segment of his life, like an actual story. It's not just going to be the classic arc and fall of B.B. King. It's going to be some particular story, but I think that's some great casting, I think.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
For sure.
So
who else have I seen? Angela Bassett has been in my
amazing
booth. I didn't know who she was at first. You know, had this big super floppy hat.
Right.
So you can't really see who it is. And then I'm like, oh shit, it's Angela Bassett.
Right. I big leagued Steve Miller at that show too. He was kind of just talking. I was doing jewelry in the booth and helping Susan sell jewels, and he came in and he kind of had the embroidered jeans look, kind of, and had like the fancy shirt, but it's kind of like, I'm not going to lie, he was a little douchey. He kind of had a douchey look, but kind of douchey with money. And I kind of big leagued him to go see Beck because Beck was playing. And I'm like, I want to go see that. And I was like, well, I'll talk to you later. And he kind of looked like somebody, but I saw him on the Jazz Fest post later that he was like, I'm like, oh yeah, that was Steve Miller. I big leagued.
There was a confirmation.
Yeah, just not just a regular douchebag, but a famous one.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. So who else? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Those are probably
That's huge.
The two of the more famous. Yeah, that's all I can think of.
Yeah.
Like at the moment, those are the top two.
Of course. Hey, how did you? I read in your bio, and I found this really interesting because I started the same way. But you were an art director at a small publication after school. And how did that start? Like, was this right after school that you got a job?
So I went right after undergrad. Undergrad was a mass communications degree. Right after that was I went to Savannah College of Art and Design for graphic design. And I was already doing photography along the way on my own,
right.
Just figuring it out. And I figured I was getting good in my own pace. But let me learn something that I know there's actually a job I can go to, right. Or at least be a one man shop. So let me learn the graphic design piece. I'm already doing the photography piece. Right after grad school, I completed the program. I stuck around in town for like 2 years.
In Savannah?
In Savannah, yeah. And then I had a friend who hooked me up with the art director gig at a small little boutique agency in Chicago. So that brought me, it was a good reason to bring me home. It wasn't a ton of money.
No, it never is.
It got me, but it got me into the arena. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And this is what made me, and I'm sure you too, like you were thinking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like graphic design, you're already a photographer, and what makes you more marketable, and me too, was like I learned graphic design, and then I have my concentration is in illustration. So that's how I was trained. And it's like, well, how can I get this guy? His photos are for free. I hire the graphic designer. He's already skilled. And on the side, you can get those photos. So I was always doing spot illustration and putting those into the paper. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's how they get you. But I mean, it does get you a job. That's how you start out.
It gets you in there, and then it's a little bit easier to maneuver once you're in and you've been working for somebody for a year or two or whatever. Then it's like, now you have the insider scoop on, oh, well, such and such agency is hiring, or this publication is hiring.
Right.
And it gave me an opportunity to freelance a little bit too, and to charge my agency an additional fee.
See, you're smarter about it then, because I was just
from my salary.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was just like, okay, well, you do it. Like, well, we need a little illustration here. I'm like, well, I've seen your pen and inks. You do it. But at least you're charging more. So
yeah, I was saying, no, like we have a budget for photography, right? Like, yeah, I'm like, all right, cool. Well, on my lunch break or on Saturday, I'll go shoot X, Y, and Z, and I'll submit my invoice.
Right.
Or if something needed to be printed, and I could get a better deal because I used to be a quote unquote print broker when I was in grad school. That's how I made a little bit of extra money. Somebody needed some design work, and then I would quote them, retail, what it would cost to get printed, work out a deal with the printer. So I'll get, another 20% or something on top with the printing. So I was a lot of times able to get them a better deal. So I'm like, oh, you need that printed? They charge what? I can do it for less. And then, and then I would bill them out, the additional thing. But that all happened with going to school for graphic design, and having relationships with, printers and photographers, and then being in an agency and knowing that they have those line items for printing, for photography, for whatever. I'm like, I want all those line items.
Yeah. Just put Clifton right in there. Every line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's me too. Okay, that's me.
Yep.
So who got you into this? I mean, how did you start? Is that Savannah again, or?
No, actually. So I made a little bit of bread, and I'll share the numbers or whatever. It might have been like $38K or $40K, which is what the job that brought me to Chicago, right? 2005 or so. I went to an art festival, I'm looking around. I'm not terribly impressed with what I see. Like nothing's like really moving.
Yeah.
Specifically in the photography department, what I mean?
Do you remember what show it was?
Yeah, it was Well Street.
Okay, yeah.
It was Well Street Arts Festival. And you know how they have LeBron's The Decision?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So what I saw The Transaction. I saw a guy with some mediocre artwork. And
did you see a little travel porn?
Right. Mediocre artwork. I was like, I think I'm better than this guy, or at least, I could be here in this arena, what I mean? And then I saw a woman that was very excited exchange this guy cash for his work. And I saw The Transaction.
Yeah.
And I'm literally outside of the booth, and I got my hands on my hips, and I'm watching, and I'm like, there is no way I can't be out here doing the exact
That's
same
amazing.
thing.
So you just kind of saw it and started on your own.
Because what I was doing before, which is a terrible hustle, like people will have a event like, oh yeah, I'm having a little cocktail social and I'm selling tables, So if you want to rent a little $50 table to show off your work and, try to sell some work and things like that. So I would do those on the weekends.
Okay.
And they were not lucrative, like by any stretch. Like these people have 20 family members come by, hang out. Oh, this is nice. Good luck. Congratulations.
I love the congratulations.
Right. And they keep it moving. So yeah, I just saw the opportunity there, and I'm like, no, people are coming here to purchase art. It has to be working for at least half the people here. There are 300 artists here. So, why not?
There you go. How'd you go about the booth? Like, did you start looking at where people are, how they're setting up and where they're getting tents? And
so I wasn't even getting that far, honestly. I would start talking to some of the artists, And we get the same thing now. Like people asking me, how do you get started? And then blah, 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 blah. And you think you might have a sell. And then they're like, yeah, because I'm an artist too. And, I want to, and then it kind of just, you're there to sell.
Right.
And then they want to talk about how you got in the business. They want coaching while you're trying to sell. It's kind of like the wrong place to do it. So I was getting a lot of, like push-offs and people not necessarily sharing information on how to get into the show and X, Y, and Z. And as you know, it's not I saw a show today, I can go do a show next week or next month. It's like a 6 month to 7, 8 month process. Yeah. So they want their money up front. They want them, and you have to apply the whole next year. You know what I mean? It's like the show's in August. It's like, if you want to do this show, you have to apply, next February.
Right.
And it's like, so it took me a whole year to kind of get myself together.
And then once you get in, then you're like, oh shit, I'm in. And and you have, you kind of need that 6 months, and then it comes and then you got to get your stuff together. You have to have your body of work. And because I remember that Coconut Grove was my first, with this body of work, because I had a previous body of work, but with this body of work, I'm like, okay, Coconut Grove, I got in. And that was 10 years ago. So Coconut Grove was still the Grove.
It was still primo.
Yeah.
Primo show.
Really good. So I'm like, okay, I'm psyched. I got into a real one. I got Fort Worth right after that. And then I'm like, okay, I've got a body of work. Now I got to make it. Now I got to sell it. Now I already knew how to display it at the time. So I was a little bit ahead of where you were going. But that's amazing. And I'm almost surprised. Like I've talked to 3 people now who were like, Michael Cole, he helped me out. Michael Cole is like, he's the guy. He's like such a sweetheart. So when people are coming into there, he's super encouraging with up and comers, and he's such a gentle guy, a real gentle soul. He's like, oh well, he kind of makes you feel like you can do it. So talking to Ty, and he totally encouraged my wife, getting her out there too. But Cole is one of those guys that, like, if you see Cole and you see Chicken Matt, you got to know it's like, okay, it's one of us. Like, do you ever size them up a little bit? And you're like, one of us is going to win the photography, but who's it going to be? I was wondering about that, because I kind of feel like, those guys, if they're in the shows and the top shows, those are, depending on what the jurors are looking for, it's like those are the photographers. And there are plenty of others. I don't mean to belittle others. Those are the guys I know, and as far as photography goes. But I don't want to put my foot too far in my mouth, even though that is kind of my job.
When I first started, there were the regulars. You know what I mean? Like there were the guys who were like, if they were in the show, that's who was winning. You know what I mean? Like that's who was winning the award. And I see it shifting, you know what I'm saying? Like little by little, year over year. Like I've definitely had my seasons, you know what I'm saying? Where I'm like on a run, like every show or every other show.
The award tour.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Susie and I were joking. We were sitting on the couch the other night, and I'm like, God, I wonder, this is probably like 6 months ago, but I'm like, I feel like I just want to send Cliff a ribbon. Like he hasn't gotten one. He hasn't gotten a ribbon in 6 months. And like, I feel like he needs some kind of award to keep it going.
That's funny. That is funny. Yeah, that would help actually.
just to make you feel a little better.
That would have helped. I'd have gave a whole thank you speech on Instagram or something like, hey, I don't know what I did to deserve this, but
it just says best in Cliff.
There
it's
you
a
go.
Big long, yeah. Hey, you have had a pretty. Your spring has got to be just kind of getting going. But I saw you in Cherry Creek. How many years ago? But it's super. I was on a date, and she is an art show artist. But we look across the bar, and not only are you on a date, but you're on a date with an actual civilian. Like she's not in the art show industry at all. It's like you're sitting there with a beautiful woman, and I'm like, so we sent a round of drinks over, and take it from here. Where did that end up?
Oh man, that's my fiance now, man.
And that's why I wanted to bring it up. Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
That's Kathy. That's Kat. We are engaged now, and we are expecting a little one on the way. So
that's incredible.
Almost any day now, within the next 2 weeks, like young Henri will be here.
That's amazing. I just congratulations. I wanted to bring that up. And does that, I mean, beginning of June, that's not the best timing in the world for what we do for a living.
Yeah, true. It's a good time. It was a good time for us and for her, especially with COVID and having to work from home. She doesn't necessarily need to be in the office, things like that. So there was a benefit to starting the family now, as opposed to waiting a little bit longer. But yeah, it wasn't the perfect time. It's like,
well, I mean, it never is, but it always is.
It's like, congratulations, you're a dad. And I'm like, all right, babe, well, I'll see you in 2 months.
Yeah. Right. Well, I got Old Town, and then I'm going to be going, and she's going to be like,
Yeah, I know. There's been some negotiations around that. So
I'm sure.
Yeah, I also don't, there's one thing when someone tells you, or when someone's like, yo, if you want to be with me, you can't do X, Y, and Z, right?
Okay.
But it's a different thing when it's like you're with someone and you're like, man, I don't want to go. I don't want to be gone as much as I was before. Same with having a family, like, or having a daughter. Like, I know that I'm not going to want to be on the road as much as I was before. Like, I was doing 25, 26 shows, like, at one point. When I met her, I was probably doing that many.
Well, that's the different feeling. My wife being an art show artist, we make the worst time in the world, like, because home's already in the truck.
Right. True.
So we're driving down the road and I used to be like, 10, 12, 14-hour drive, whatever. I can do that in a shot. We get like 4 hours in. I'm like 6 hours in. I'm like, I'm tired. You want to, let's pull over.
Right.
Like, why bother? What's the rush to get home when home is there?
Yeah, true.
So, but no, I totally understand that. It's like, and that's a great feeling to want to be home, as opposed to the opposite. You can't wait to just be on the road all the time. You want to be there.
Very true. Very, very true. So I'm excited about that part and figuring out which shows actually work, for our schedule, and then the shows that work for my schedule. I would love to do the top 10 shows that I can get into every year and just stick to 10,
Has this year taught you how to not do it? The fact that we haven't been able to travel, have you learned, like, okay, well, I can hustle here and there and not do all the shows. I mean, 26,
Yeah. Sure.
There's no way Kat's going to let you do more than half the year on the road.
Exactly. That's not.
You're not going to want to.
Yeah, that's not happening anymore.
Right.
The idea is, so I purchased a place in 2017, gallery space. At the time,
nice.
Is a live work situation. That's where I'm at now.
Okay.
Name of it is Fly Paper Gallery. It's in Chicago, Beverly neighborhood.
Great name.
But the idea was I know at some point I'm not going to be on the road, or I'm not going to want to be on the road all the time. So instead of me going to the people, let me start, bubbling and creating something so that the people can come to me. Right.
Yeah. How long has that been open?
Man, when will it open? Is the question.
Okay. All right. So you're not open yet.
Yeah. So, it's more of it's been more of a by appointment only situation. It's been more of a having events or showings or something here every now and then, but it's not a regular open hours. You know what I'm saying? Like, I kind of intend to eventually, but with everything retracting, it's a different beast.
Sorry,
it's a totally different beast.
It is a completely different beast.
Yeah.
I have a couple of friends that are art show artists that they're an art show couple, Jackson Young Gallery.
Yep, I'm familiar. I know.
Park.
Yep.
Yeah. So Chris he's the salesman and Laura is the artist, and they're the perfect match, but they've got a gallery and talk. I sell my work with those guys, but the pace of that, like you have to be like that art show thing. It's like, no, I'm going to be gone Sunday at 5. That is not a gallery thing. You've got to get your whole mindset different, like somebody's going to come and kick your tires on a Monday and they might come back the next Monday and that's part of their routine. And, 3-4 months later, they're like, yeah, I'll take that. I need to have that.
Right.
But like that slow play is not something we're used to.
Not at all.
We're a retail store 5 days until Christmas.
For
you know what I mean?
For sure.
Like it's like the urgency is there. It's like, this is the piece. I might sell it to the next person that's down the street. It's gone.
Yep.
So that's not the gallery.
I'm here for 2 days and I'm not coming back until the following year or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting to hear. I want to talk to you again after it's been open for a year or two and get that pace. See how you handle that, because it's a different thing.
It's a totally different beast. Then being
do you think you'll hire somebody that's used to it?
I don't know about hiring somebody that's necessarily used to it. But hiring somebody to help create it or turn it into being what I want it to be. Am I going to operate like a legitimate gallery, open 5-6 days a week and have hours? Probably not. But it will be a permanent place where, there'll be open studio Thursdays, you know what I mean? Create open for events, special showings, things like that. So we'll figure it out as it goes. But doing 25 shows a year, 20 shows a year, and I'm not present and I'm damn near a one-man show, like I can't be 2 places at once. So me buying the place is kind of planting the seed for like what I want to do and be in the future.
Yeah, nice. So we talked a little bit about your work, and there's so much mediocre photography out there. I feel like with your work, you can't find the place. Like you look in and you see somebody's like, okay, I've seen this barber chair. And the ceiling is caved in, and there's graffiti all over the walls, and the light is shining on it, and it's a gorgeous photograph. But if you know where that room is, you can take the shot. But with your work, it's part of your experience. It's part of your story. You're saying something. You're not going to go find some autumnal leaves in a puddle and shoot that.
Right.
This is, you're saying something, which is really rare in photography. So, talk on that a little bit about how you find your voice.
Okay. So finding your voice, through photography, really it's my perspective and what I want to see, what I would like to see represented out there, So a lot of my work is black and brown faces, so portraits of people, black and brown, of African descent or Latino descent, and like that's what I'm interested in seeing. That's what I didn't see going to museums and galleries and things like that growing up. I wanted to see a reflection of me and the communities that I grew up in and the people that I know and that I'm friends with and things like that. So I was like, all right, instead of just bitching about it, let me be one of the guys that actually like creates that kind of work. And then over time, I got encouragement because I found that other people were interested in seeing what I wanted to see and applauded me because they got what they wanted out of the work that I was naturally producing. So that's kind of where the voice comes from. And a little story with...
Well, there's a lot of strength in that too. Yeah. A lot of your imagery is about pride, and it's about an individuality that has strength to it too. I'm thinking of a couple of your images, but you were getting ready to tell a story.
Oh, so the story part is you just have to believe in what your mission is or what your narrative is going to be. Let the narrative be the core that drives the work that you produce. kind of what I've noticed in talking to like gallery owners and museum curators and things like that, and just my own opinion, a lot of the work in the art world that is celebrated is more so celebrated on what the artist was trying to do rather than what they actually did. And
interesting.
Which means to me that the mission or your calling or your message or your intent is more important and more significant than the actual like final product, you know? So it's almost like, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how many accolades you have and blah, 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 blah. It's like, what do you stand for? You tell people what you stand for. And it's like, cool, I can get behind that. Let me know when you have something going on and I'll support, I'll blah, 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 blah. So it has more to do with
your heart
in the work, and being able to convey that to people and then people understanding it. Like, I think that's where the rubber meets the road. It's a successful piece if you can convey what you want to convey and people receive it within the realm of what you were trying to say. And then that's a dope piece. That's what helped out in graphic design too.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I wanted to bring up one of your pieces. It's one of my favorites. There's a young man standing on top of a wheel.
Yeah.
You know, and it's an incredibly strong image. It was chosen by Bayou City as one of the poster image.
It was a poster.
Kinda. They chose half of it.
Kinda.
They chose half. But I mean, you are an art director too. They needed a horizontal image. They liked that image, but they took half of it. And I don't want to, they did made you poster artists. They put you in the front, but that doesn't say what that photo says.
For sure.
If you take away the wheel.
Yeah, for sure. That one is so that one was shot in Ghana, and the name of the piece is The High Road. And a lot of my work revolves around the idea of perspective, a change of perspective. The reason I shoot what I shoot is to kind of change the narrative of the imagery we see of Black and brown people, so it's more of a positive, more uplifting, more of your everyday beautiful nuggets of life, and not just like tragic scenarios that we, are kind of used to seeing like within the media.
Right.
But yeah, that was a powerful piece. They wanted wings, they wanted.
Okay. I was going to ask you about wings next.
Yeah. They wanted to use wings, and I'm saving her. I don't know what I'm saving. I don't know what I'm saving her for, but for the publicity of an event and a festival or something, and I'm not getting an end on it.
Yeah.
With that being my most popular, famous, recognizable piece, something's just like, nah, don't do it, because the next guy will be like, oh, you used it for that one, and you used it for that one, and they used it too.
Yeah.
They're like, nah, okay, well, what else you got?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I know exactly what you mean, because I remember you asking me about it, I think.
Yep.
We at least talked poster, but I don't remember whether you talked about wings. But you posted wings, and you got, there's a little girl, and she's standing in her mirror, and she's standing on the sink,
with the
and
arms
she's got her arms raised, and it's such a powerful image of strength and of pride in young girls and pride in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You shared that on Instagram, and it went viral. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because I mean, everybody's kind of fantasy,
right?
Kind of picked up on that too. So anyway, talk on that a little bit.
All right. So there's a show in Miami during Art Basel during Miami Art Week called Prism. And I had a couple of pieces selected to be in the show. So Wings was one of the pieces that was selected in the show. So during that week, I ended up posting Wings. And because all kinds of celebrities and everybody is out that weekend, like I'm kind of pushing it a little hard. Like, yo, come to the show, come see the piece.
Yeah.
I'm looking for my break, right?
Yeah, of course.
And a handful of important people end up coming by the show, end up seeing the piece. They ended up, photographing it, finding a copy of it or whatever, tweeting it, sending it out. But the big swing came when Alicia Keys posted the photo, and it went simply bananas after that. Yeah, simply bananas.
It didn't even. I mean, I remember seeing her post that, or you retweeted that,
yep.
Posted it on Instagram, and it didn't. I mean, Holly Berry commented on that too. Was that, or am I making that up?
Commented on it. No. She was on there. She was on there for sure. I had to screenshot that too.
Yeah, of course. Alicia Keys posts it, and Holly Berry comments on it. Yep. I just remember seeing something like, "Girl, that's amazing." Yep. I'm like, blows.
Exactly.
I mean, how did that help you out as far? I mean, did you get a lot more followers? Did it translate into money?
So followers, yes. Inquiries or whatever about the piece, yes. Did it turn over into dollars like the next day or the next couple days or things like that? Not immediately, but I have sold, send a larger limited edition piece a couple occasions.
I mean, that to me
due to that, you know what I mean? So did it make money?
So much.
For sure, for sure.
I'm sure it did.
And it's a timeless piece, I think, and it's always going to be relevant,
Of course. And I loved what you did with the Kamala Harris image too.
That was cool. Too. I was on the fence. I was totally on the fence about it. But I'm like, it's cool when you can. I don't want to call it a bootleg, but you know what I mean. But when you can revamp your own piece where there is like some significance like in the world right now. So let's call it a remix, not anything else.
Well, there was so much excitement when that happened.
For sure.
And there's so much pride in that and in pride in our country and for what has been accomplished.
Absolutely.
The walls that are breaking down. So, you can't fault anybody for getting caught up in that kind of excitement. And I loved that image. For sure.
The thing that made me do it, I'm like, let me remix it before somebody else does or somebody else tries to do a version of it. Because you would start seeing things floating around that, that was happening. So, but I'm glad I did it. She has seen it.
Has she really?
She has.
How do you know? How did you find out?
A woman that purchased, she purchased like maybe 5 of them. I only did a small amount of them. Is good friends with her.
Incredible.
Yeah. So I think one is going her way, which is cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Super cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I mean, that image just resonates with so many people. That's why I wanted to ask you about it.
Yep.
And you've juried a lot of the top shows in the country because I've seen you winning best of shows. So a lot of times they'll come in and they'll invite you to jury later. I have an ex-girlfriend that juried one of the really big ones, and she messaged me about it. She was like, I was prepared for the good. I was prepared for the bad. But I was not prepared for the sheer volume of middle of the road. Like, what do you do with it? So how do you do that? Like when you're jurying a show, I talked to our mutual friend, Michael Schwegman, about this. And he was talking about Money Mike. We call him the Huge because he was like, you were like, well, you look at the awards, and that might be your new name too, because it's kind of like you look at the awards and you're like, well, who won? The Huge. We're like, the Huge, and there he is up at the top. But he was like, well, you just have to have, okay, here's my goods, here's my bads, here's my maybes, but you can cut it down pretty quickly. How hard is that? Do you do you get people asking you, like when you see, like when I see my friends on the jury, I get real quiet and I'm like, oh shit, what if they don't, here's the honesty. What if they actually don't like my work?
Right.
But do people reach out or how does that work out for you?
So I don't think I've really had anybody reach out necessarily.
Good.
But
that's embarrassing.
Yeah, a little bit. I've had to save a couple people in a show though before, like people that I thought should win or not win, but people who I thought should be in the show, and then somehow naturally didn't make it. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's when you get to throw your veto card in. So it's a little rough, right? So you're quote unquote you're an elite artist in this arena. Like you've won an award, they've asked you to be a juror. You have confidence in your work. Your bar for your medium may have a lot to do with where you're at as an artist and what you produce, right?
Right.
So you have a bar, and if I'm the high bar, okay. So then you start looking at all of the submissions, and when people aren't producing work like either to your level or above your level, it's tough to judge. And each show has its own identity. Each show has their own,
Do they dictate that to you? Do they tell you what they're looking for at all, or do they just choose you and trust your vision?
They just trust us and the vision.
Good.
Like we actually curate the show. It's not we're looking for X, Y, and Z, so make sure you put X, Y, and Z in the show, Right. Like I personally have a responsibility being a minority in the arena, in the festival circuit, to make the show as diverse as possible. So that's one of the things that I look at as I'm jurying. And
I asked Stephen King that too, and I'm like, okay, during last year, like we didn't really get to face or have to face head on, however you want to look at it, but all the Black Lives Matter protests and everything that went down last summer, that would have gone on, that would have taken over, and it may still art shows, and we would have had some kind of voice in it. But like, how do you, in an industry like this that relies so heavily on the jury that's blind, a blind jury, how do you make it more inclusive? Because it is a really middle-aged white industry for a lot of what you're dealing with. You go to a show and it's like, well, I'm 50, and I know I'm like, and a lot of people still consider me one of the younger ones, and I'm like, that's crazy to me. But I mean, it is. How do you do that? How do you make it more? Is it just what people are saying?
I mean, you just honestly, you have to. It all comes down to the submissions. You can only pick from what's in the pool.
Right.
So while looking, I guess I just kind of keep that in mind, looking for diverse themes in the work. In addition,
and some of the people that are out there too, who are like, okay, well, I know this guy's artist, and I want that to represent the show too. It's not like you're just picking black voices or brown voices. You're saying like, okay, well, this guy's a pro. Saying something interesting.
There has to be a quality level,
of course,
a quality level too. Both on presentation and what you're exhibiting.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough. It's tough to jury some of these shows, man. Sometimes you don't have a lot to work with, especially if you're considered the expert for your medium. And sometimes people will be in the jury like, yeah, so I don't know how to jury this. What's your take? So now instead of having one vote, like you damn near have 3 votes, because people are referring to you of like, is it a yes or is it a no? Or is it this guy or is it this guy,
Yeah. Well, you can also tell, like copycats. I mean, we do all have people
Tons
out
of
there
them.
that are copycat, and you don't want the tribute artist. You know, you want the real deal. Like, you don't want the guy that's the cover band. You want. So it's tough. I mean, we both know, and I hope you haven't had any. And I'm sure we're all going to have our own copycats. But I mean, there are people out there who are like, you know, you've got the faux bots and then you got the mobots. It's like, really?
Right.
Like, did you guys really just change a letter? Like, that. It's really uncool. And sometimes it'll be in the secondary show too. And it's like, well, here's the secondary show, and I'm walking down the road, and it's like, oh my God, I just saw, well, here's this guy's knockoff, here's this woman's knockoff, here's this person. It's tough. So you have to know. I mean, it's like, do you sit there comparing, like, oh my God, I got to get this right, you know, because you don't want to let the knockoff or let them both in.
Well, that's when, I mean, it's pretty easy to determine when you're looking through the jury, but like, all right, number 206 and 607, and you can ask people like, is this the same artist? And they were like, no, it's not the same artist. And then you ask around the room, like, yo, like, who's the real deal, and who's the copycat, or who's been on the scene longer, who hasn't been on the scene longer, and you kind of make your decision based on that. The funny part is that some guys do you better than you do you, and I'm like, I kind of favor the copycat a little bit, like whatever like slight variation they're making, I'm like, I'm enjoying that more than this. So, you know, you kind of have to be careful, and you have to manage, you know, however you manage to choose who you choose. Just have a reason. Honestly, at the end of the day, just have a reason you're free to stand on for choosing who you chose to do. And I'll even backtrack a little bit in terms of finding your voice and figuring out the work that you're going to produce. I hate it when you go to a show, and this is what happened when I first started out. Like, landscapes were the deal, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you saw everybody selling landscapes, and you saw large photos of landscapes walking down the aisle, like people taking them home. And I'm over here selling portraits, not just portraits, but I'm selling portraits of Black people. And I'm in an audience where there's not many Black people at the show, and I'm like, am I in the right spot? And it's like, nah, just stay true to your work, and you know, you'll develop your following eventually. They may not be here right now, but you'll develop it at some point. But what I was going to say is, just because you see landscapes and boats and rainbows leaving the show, that does not mean you need to go chasing boats and rainbows. And then next time we see you, you have a booth full of boats and rainbows. You know what I mean? Like, don't chase what you think is popular or selling. Like, stick to what's here, and eventually it'll come around, and it'll serve you better because it's authentic, not because you were chasing the dollar.
It's about the integrity. You know, that's what I talked to Ty about a little bit. It's like, well, Ty says whatever the hell he wants. Right. You know, you walk past his booth, and it's like, if that appeals to you, you're going to walk in. But he's not ever going to be like, well, I saw this, you know, people really liked those covered bridge scenes. So you're not going to see a covered bridge scene every time in ballpoint pen. So it is. And people are attracted to that integrity, and they're attracted to, you know, even if you're in like if you show in, you know, you went to school in Iowa, but if you show in Des Moines, you know, your work, does that translate, or do you have to target like where you go, where you show people? It's like, you may only see like 10 brown or Black people in Des Moines when you go show next time, or you're like, okay, well, let me just go focus where I show my work.
You know what, I'm not selling the work exclusively to Black folks. Photographs of Black folks, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's I
mean, that's what I wondered. You know, it doesn't have to be a diverse crowd.
No, not at all. Not at all. There's a whole separate issue of why we don't see the audience or like the showgoers, why we don't see much diversity in the showgoers. Like that's a whole nother issue there. Like personally, I didn't grow up going to art festivals. People like friends, and we didn't grow up going to art festivals. We didn't grow up with the idea of investing in art or collecting art or anything like that. Like it wasn't on our radar necessarily. I don't necessarily market to specifically to different cities. I may include a piece or two that might speak to that place, but there's an authentic reason why I picked to shoot there in the first place. Not to if I'm going to St. Louis, I got to bring some St. Louis stuff. Like I'm not the St. Louis guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not bringing the St. Louis body.
I did that early on in my career and just about killed myself trying to oh my God, what if I do this? What if I do that? And it's like, okay, let me focus, take a breath, just do my work. But I did do that early on, and you'll kill yourself trying to do that.
Yeah, because you're chasing. You're chasing something at that point.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not authentic. And I've told a couple artists too, young kids, like, what's a piece of advice that I could tell them about when they're producing their work? I'm like, produce what you feel. I've had pieces that I've shown for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Same show, same booth, see the same people. 3 years it's in the booth, doesn't sell. I think it's a strong piece.
Yeah.
The third year, people come by and they're like, oh my God, when did you do this? Like, this is amazing. And I'm like, it was in the booth the last several years, you know what I mean? But the cool part is you as an artist, you might just be ahead of the curve, right? Like your thoughts or your ideas might just be ahead of the curve. And then something happens in the world that makes the work that you produced a little more relevant.
That makes sense.
For them at the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Where there's an energy. Yeah, I've had pieces in my booth that there's something happens and there's an energy. Somebody comes in and they're like, oh man, I really love that. I really should buy it. And then, it happens all the damn time, but it's like, I should get it. And then they leave. Very next piece that's sold. And you've had it for like 3-4 years. And and you're like, you believe in it. And then also I believe too, like sometimes you need that weird one in your booth to attract people in there to get them to get the other one or the one that's a little bit more conceptual in order to get them. And you're like, and they don't think they have the courage to buy that or to hang it in their house. But then, okay, well, let me get the safe one. And then 2 or 3 years later, they can get the one that they really want. If it's still there. And that's how you get collectors too, because you keep saying different things. Sure. You keep coming up with, I can't wait to see what you've done with a year off, so to speak, or the time to create, has this been it's been a little stagnant for me. I've been a little bit, it's been hard, but have you been able to be creative this past year?
Creative in my thoughts and things that I want to do and ready to do. Yes. In execution, not so much. At least not to the level that I want to be. You know what I mean? Yeah. I personally don't work well when I am either in stress or agitated or under some sort of like trauma or whatever, right? Okay. Yeah. Usually I do my best work when I'm in my bubble. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm in a bubble. I have my thoughts and ideas. I'm insulated from what everybody else is talking about, and I'm just creating. I'm in my cubby hole and I'm doing my work. I'm in my laboratory doing my work. Yeah. And then the rest of the world is still moving, but it's not affecting me because I'm decided on this and I'm working on this. Right.
Well, you and I were both living during this past year in kind of like hotspots of Black Lives Matter and culture in Richmond, where I grew up and was still living until, I guess, May. We have had this Monument Avenue and Richmond, Virginia, capital of Confederacy, and all of these monuments of the Confederate monuments. And Kehinde Wiley has a huge presence in Richmond.
Okay.
One of his first big paintings was sold to the Virginia Museum or bought by the Lewis family and put into the Virginia Museum. They supported him early on. He came for a big show in Richmond and was blown away by the beauty of the statues on Monument Avenue, but the meaning of it and being in the old capital of the Confederacy and seeing that. So when Black Lives Matter blew up last summer, there were protests up and down this rich suburb of Richmond, pulling down the Columbus statue, trying to pull down some of the other sculptures.
Yep.
The mayor and the governor got together and they took them all out. And it was powerful for me to go back and to walk down the avenue and be like, here's where I grew up and my white privilege living 5 blocks away, just thinking, oh, look at the pretty sculptures. You know,
Right.
I didn't have to confront the meeting, but to go to see the meeting, and then you can walk right up Monument Avenue and see everything that people have done and then end up at the Virginia Museum. You take a hard left. And to see that sculpture that was inspired by those, but then to take the Black voice and to put it on that sculpture of pride, and to see it so pristine when everything else there's been all this violence.
Right.
But it was powerful for me. I don't feel like it's my right to make any art about it. Chicago was a hotbed too. Like it blew up.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, did you make any art about that, or is it kind of just percolating?
So I went to a couple protests, couple demonstrations, and photographed while I was out there. The way I create my work, I used to, like once upon a time ago, was have an idea and then go out there and produce the piece. So that it says what I wanted to say. And then later, as I started traveling abroad, I became a little bit more Johnny on the spot, where I immersed myself into a culture, event, situation, and then photograph things as they happen. So obviously protests going on, I'm not creating anything. I'm more in the documenting.
Yeah.
Documenting.
I mean, at that point, does it kind of become more about like photojournalism kind of work?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a different approach to capturing that. And then you have an idea, if you see some repetitive things happening, positioning yourself in the right spot to capture what you think might be a great shot. It's a little different. But yeah, so photographed a few protests, and on the artistic side, like what I intellectually want to say and how I want to comment on everything and where we are right now. I have an idea book, notebook that I've been like sketching and writing and journaling and everything like in there. And now I'm starting to dissect some of those thoughts and like, all right, which ones can I turn into like some dope pieces that have some significance? What means what? So it's a lot of figuring out how I want to comment more so than it is actually producing the pieces right now. The tough part is that listening to media while you're trying to create, it's like either more information or more motivation or more like almost a pressure, but like, oh, you have to comment on this now, and you have to comment on this, and you have to make reference to that. It's a little distracting, which is why I say, most times I feel a little bit more comfortable working while I'm in my bubble. Yeah. So I can actually finish pieces, complete pieces, and say what I want to say without feeling like, all right, well, it's not saying enough because now I need to comment on this and now I need to reference that.
And it makes me wonder if people are, I just ask you about it, but it makes me wonder once we are able to get back to work, that might be pretty exhausting for you to constantly have to answer to it,
Yeah, true.
I just kind of wonder, is that going to be the thing? We're like, well, where are your Black Lives Matter pictures? Is it going to?
No, that's always a question. A lot of times that's the question.
Yeah.
Or even simply, you're from Chicago. Where's your Chicago stuff? And it's like,
right.
It's less about Chicago.
Yeah.
and more to do with the story. which ones did I shoot in Chicago? Yeah, I shot all of these in Chicago, but Chicago really doesn't matter necessarily. Like it's not the centerpiece of the story of that piece, you know.
But I've gotten. I mean, I'm Richmond, Virginia on my sign, and I've had somebody come to me like, "Well, I love Civil War art." I'm like, "Well, I don't, and I've never done anything about that." Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, "Why did you just say that?" It's just like it's a rote thing. It's like they see something and then they have to say it. You know.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, very true, very very true.
Yeah.
So you can't control what people.
You can't, and you have to be bulletproof when you're standing there and just kind of take it.
You do, you do, and have your answers. You know, have your prepared statements of how you're going to interact with people, especially if you've noticed the trend that you're starting to hear it often. It's kind of like, all right, well, you might want to be prepared with how to respond.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've gotten myself in trouble and been offended at something that somebody says, and then I say something shitty back to them, and then all of a sudden you're taken off your game, and how are you going to sell anything in the next, until you get your mind right?
True.
It's all about sales, and it's all about, like, in our industry, I feel like you can't be, like, I can't sell anything unless I'm likable, and I'm trying to just be myself and be open. And it's like, and if somebody takes you off of that, then you just kind of shut down and,
True.
sit in your chair. And I never, I'm going to get into it with Daryl Thetford, but talking about sales and stuff, but I never see you sitting. I walk by your booth. You're not sitting in your chair.
You know what? I am sometimes though. I've had people get on me about that. And it honestly depends on the show. It depends on like the energy.
Okay.
Of the show and what's going on, but I've definitely been caught like in my chair,
slumped over, looking at your phone,
slumped over, like bad, just kind of like bad energy. Where I've had to, there's definitely a power in giving yourself a pep talk before you do a festival and like having a game plan and things like that. So I'll sit behind the booth sometimes, like, all right, I need a great show. I need to do X amount of money. So I give myself $1 goal. And I'm like, cool. Like, you need to give good energy. You need to say hello to everybody. You need to shake everybody's hand. You need to make sure that before they leave, ask them to sign your guest book. You know what I mean? Like, you need to engage, and be happy and pleasant. So that they creating,
they want a piece of that. Like if I'm hanging wings on my wall, I don't just want wings on my wall. I want I want the dude I met on the corner. I want that interaction that we had. It's a special kind of thing, and I always try to say like open. I'll stand in the front of my, I'll stand in my booth with the front closed, and I'll be doing I'll be open and I'm like, okay, be open to people. My wife taught me that. She's like, you can't just, sit there like that and close it off.
You can't do it.
No, you can't do it. And that's why you can't do that many shows in a row too, because a lot of times by the end of that run, you're just like, oh, don't say it. And they say, somebody's coming, you're like, I already know what you're going to say. Don't say it. But you got to just be like, somebody, and maybe it was me, I don't know if I came up with this or not, and if somebody else told me this, but you're the prettiest girl at the bar, and somebody says something dumb to you, you just be like, they're just hitting on me, they're fine, they're trying to make that connection. They're not trying to be an asshole, they're just trying to be like, hey, come around here often, and it's like, okay, I know I'm all that. So you just have to open yourself up to it and be like, yeah, I come here all the time. It's just be
it's funny as I do this, I'll back up a little bit. Let's say it's a slow show, right? And somebody's sitting up there talking to you, they just run up to you and talk about, now they're talking to me about the Cubs or the White Sox or something.
Right.
And I like baseball, but I'm not following everybody.
That's not why you came,
That's not why I'm here, actually. But I'll sit there and I'm talking to them and I'm like, yeah, so I watched the game last night and it was, it was pretty good, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, when he hit that home run in the ninth inning, it was pretty dope. You know what I mean? So I'm up here like doing all these like hand gestures while I'm talking to this guy about, you know what I'm saying, the same hand gestures I would do about selling a piece. We're just talking about baseball. They'll assume that, we're talking about the work and, I'm selling them and blah, 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 hands laughing, stuff like that. I'm basically performing.
Yeah, you are performing. And I'll use, somebody comes in, like a teenage kid comes in and they're like, they engage with you about the work and like, oh man, that's really cool. And it's like, well, there's no benefit from being an asshole to a kid and discouraging them in the arts. That's my number one. And number two, why not engage with them? The shy couple over there that doesn't have the courage to ask you about it, talk to the kid, and just use her or him as the person that engages them. And it's like, and then you get other people that are listening, and then it's like it's a win-win. You've encouraged the kid in the arts, and then the shy couple is like, oh man, this guy was really nice. And and I do reproduction sometimes, and I'll use those too, as just being like, this little kid will be like, oh my God, Michael, just take it. It didn't cost me much.
Right.
Here.
You got to play the room.
Right. And you got to play the room, and it, like we were talking before, it's all about authenticity too. It's like trying to have that connection with people. So,
like, I'm in the booth. I'm here to share my story.
Right.
If nobody's asking me anything, like, they're not necessarily going to hear the story. So, you take those opportunities to engage and speak a little louder so everybody else can hear it too. You
do, man.
Yeah.
Hey, how's your place? Is it all set up for the baby?
No, absolutely not. We're house hunting right now.
Are you really?
So, yeah. So, baby stuff is everywhere.
I bet.
Half of it's sitting here in the studio. Other half is sitting in the apartment.
Well, I've got a little something for you. I'll save it until you have a place, because I asked you about your address, and I'm like, you didn't respond immediately. I'm like, maybe you don't want it yet. Like, like, what do I need with another package?
Right. Yeah, they're just kind of getting stacked at the moment.
So where are you guys looking?
It'll definitely still be in Chicago,
Good. Yeah.
South side of Chicago. So we're figuring it out from there, because the housing market is bananas right now.
Everywhere.
Folks are out here paying like 20% over asking in some areas.
Insane.
So that kind of takes us out of contention for a few things too.
Yeah.
And even as artists and business owners too, and sole proprietors and things like that, doing what you're supposed to do for your business is one thing. Like how you present your money and your financials.
Tell me about it. We just bought last year.
But when you want to purchase something, get a loan, they need your financial situation to look a particular way, right? And it's like, well, I wasn't ready for this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But here, you know what I'm saying? Like, here we are now. And,
that's
really the money's there, but it doesn't look the way you need it to look.
Right.
In order to get the, financing and things like that. So luckily I got this place through the SBA, and that was a little bit smoother of a situation, because it was, it's all business related. It's not business versus personal and looking at the whole enchilada.
Yeah.
So it worked out for me.
Yeah.
They helped me out.
That is a financial colonoscopy. It is a hard process. Yeah.
It's rough. They don't teach you about these things. A lot of artists are kind of, purely just artists and find their way to the art business and try to navigate through it, and not necessarily knowing what they're doing. Like, you're learning on the fly as you go year upon year. So
right. Well, cool. Hey, you were talking about doing a podcast. You got any more ideas on that? I think that would be really entertaining.
Yeah, I've definitely wanted to do a podcast. A couple of things. One is art, something art selling related, not necessarily selling it like a that I know it all, but I will tell my story and my experience, versus, the successes and things like that, and things that worked out for me. Interview other guys, that I've learned from, along the way.
Right. I'd love to hear that.
we'll figure something out there. This is cool. This is super cool. I'm like, babe, I'm doing a podcast.
This has been just a really cool talk. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything we didn't get to before we go?
Nah, I appreciate that, man. Thanks for asking me to do this. Super cool.
Hey, thanks again. We'll see you in Chicago.
Sounds good, bro.
All right, thanks again.
All right, man. Peace.
Awesome job with your conversation with Clifton.
Thanks.
Love
yeah,
it.
it was a really easy thing. So thank you so much to Cliff. It's nice to be able to sit down and talk with a big man. I mean, he is just such a cool guy, such a nice guy, and he's a staple. Like at all these big shows I'll go to, I can always count on running into him.
I found it kind of interesting him talking about becoming a family man and thinking about how his old life is going to fit into that, and opening his gallery. And it makes me think about the conversation that I had with Chris Dahlquist that we're going to be airing next week, where she works with career mentoring with artists and making plans for people to have multiple different revenue streams so they aren't 100% relying on the art show market, that they have other ways to support themselves. And that sure came in handy this year with COVID.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear that conversation, Douglas. It'll be really interesting to hear. My wife mentioned about, I was talking to you. We'd originally talked about doing that whole episode about kids and just doing a short interview with Mickey and Rico, a short thing with Ty. And I threw the idea out to her and I was like, yeah, maybe, Cliff's got a baby on the way. And her response was, Cliff's not bringing his baby to art shows. I just can't see that happening. There's no way. Like I can see him transitioning into just being an incredible dad and family man. And I can't wait to see that baby grow up. It's going to be pretty incredible. So, hey, Douglas, last week we had a generous benefactor, and this week you shot me an email just as I was name checking, I think, the Phobats and then their ripoff artist during my conversation with Clifton. The Amy and Phil, I've always just called them Phobats. I'm like, oh, Phobats are here. Like it's Amy Phobot and Philbot. But no, those guys threw us a little surprise money and wanted to thank them as far as supporting the podcast. We're doing this all on our own. So
it's so appreciated, you guys. Thanks so much for, letting us know you like what we do, and we feel the love. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we don't want to go full NPR fund drive or anything, but I do want to give a little shout out and let you know that you can hit us up at Independent Artist Podcast on Venmo. And if you feel like throwing a little change our way, we definitely would appreciate it.
And the other option is clicking on the link in the episode notes for PayPal. There's a direct link. That's another option if you would rather do it that way.
Or if you want to slip Douglas an envelope full of cash and just give him a little wink and a nod when you see him out there on the road, he'll accept that as well.
I'll see you in August.
Sounds good, buddy.
All right, everyone. Well, it was a great week. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you next week.
See you next week, Douglas. Thanks.
All right, bye.
This podcast has been brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
And while you're at it, check out Will's website at willarmstrongart.com and my website at sigworthglass.com.
And remember to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.